Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance. No one likes an inheritance sharing scene, our OP included. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Despite the will, my Aunt Karen thinks my parents' property belongs to her. This happened almost 5 years ago, and I just noticed yesterday that my entitled Aunt Karen has just died, and I got a call from her husband asking me to attend the funeral next weekend, and I declined, as did my older brother, Mark, for purposes of this story. Karen was my mother's older sister, and she constantly interfered in my mother and her children's lives. She never liked my father and always tried to tell my mother that she made a mistake by marrying him. She didn't like the name my parents picked out for my older brother, and my great-grandmother died the day before I was born, and when Karen found out they were going to name me after her, Karen freaked out and said she wanted to name her potential future kid so that my mother couldn't use it. Then she tried to talk her out of it by saying it's too old-fashioned and kids would make fun of me, which they did, but for other reasons. She criticized both my brothers and my choice of friends and even complained when I started playing softball because proper ladies didn't play sports, and if her daughter ever tried playing a sport, she would have her removed from the team. Spoiler, she never had children. The day after my 16th birthday, my parents drove on a business trip down to California. I live in Idaho. My dad said that when they got back, he would drive me to the DMV to get my license. He never did, because on the drive to California, they hit a patch of ice, spun out, crashed, and died. I was a wreck for some time after that. I didn't even want to attend my high school graduation later because my parents wouldn't be there. Their will split everything evenly between my brother and I. At the funeral, my parents, who owned their own business, production manager Tim, was talking to my brother, and my brother told him that in a couple of weeks he'd step in and take over, and he was counting on Tim to run things smoothly until then and help him in taking over and learning the ropes. I had no interest in the business other than it was a guaranteed summer job when I was growing up, so I stayed out of it and just collected profit checks until I sold my half to Mark, and he continues to run the business to this day. Mark told Tim that he should assure the employees that their jobs were safe and that no major changes would be made. Then one day, Aunt Karen showed up and began putting her stuff in my parents' office, and when Tim confronted her about this, she said his services were no longer needed and he was fired. Tim called Mark up, and Mark went down with the family attorney, some police, and the necessary paperwork, and had her removed, while she said the place was now hers because it was her sister's, so she was now the owner. As long as I've known her, she's never had a steady job. She's had 3 husbands, not counting the man who called me, never met him, and milked each one for as much as she could get until she divorced him. The next day, I was leaving for school. I walked, it was fairly close, about 10 minutes, and saw her car and a moving van parked outside. She said she was moving into her house, then said in a sickly sweet voice that for a reasonable rent, she would continue to allow me to stay there until I graduated high school. I went in and called my brother, and he again showed up with the family attorney, police, and all the paperwork, and had her removed from the property. I was at school, so I didn't get to see what happened, but that night Mark gave me a business card for a policeman, who I assumed helped deal with all this, and told me if I ever saw Aunt Karen on or near the property to call that number and report her immediately. Don't even try to confront her or give her a warning, just call. I do know that the movers charged her to move her stuff into the van, drive across town, get turned away, and drive back across town and move her stuff back into her apartment, which she still hadn't given notice yet. I got scared to the point that I didn't like letting our dog into the backyard when I was at school. For a while, I just put her in a locked and closed garage, and then cleaned up her messes when I got home in the afternoon. Eventually, Karen moved to Colorado, where I assume she met and married the man who called me and said that she had died and couldn't find anyone from her family to attend the funeral. I chose not to tell him about her, politely said, "Sorry for your loss, but I can't make it." From discussions with Mark, he basically told him the same thing. Outside of myself, Mark, and Mark's infant daughter, I don't think she has any living relatives. I still own the house. Mark gave me his half as part of the deal when I sold him my half of the business, but I still sleep in my bedroom. I refuse to move into what was once my parents' bedroom, the master bedroom. I go to a local university, go Broncos, and still miss my parents and think about them every day. And even though I'm 20, 21 in less than 2 weeks, own a large home, have a lot of money in the bank, I'd trade it all to have my parents back. But I don't care about the how or why of Aunt Karen's death. I'm sorry you had to go through all that. I'm glad you seem to have a good brother you can count on. Hang in there. And our second story. Just hit the rocks once and move on. Okay. When I was younger, I got a job doing pavement and other stonework. I started with 3 new guys, and the first week was pure hell. Owner didn't teach us anything, and we had zero idea what we were doing. But the one thing he did do was yell at us for like 90% of the time. He'd tell you to do something that you haven't ever done before, like driving a bobcat, and then yell at you for 5 minutes straight when you turned it wrong and the tires had digged themselves into the ground. Or he'd just give you a concrete saw and yell at you when you couldn't start it instantly. After 4 days of 12-hour days with no overtime paid, no overtime because staying after 8 hours was voluntary, but he said if you don't stay, they won't extend your contract, they changed our work site and we had to do some cobblestones for a big government project. I was super exhausted at this point, and all 3 of us were close to quitting because of the yelling plus 0 instructions on anything. Boss man and his second-in-command came to the site and showed us, just put the stones like this. Hit them once so they're even and level and move on. I tried it, but learned quickly that my eyes can't handle the height difference, so I used a line to see where they should be. Hit 4 or 5 of them, used a plank to see if they were on the same level and moved on. It looked nice, and using that plank took like 10 seconds of my time per 4 to 5 stones. Boss noticed me doing this and yelled like crazy that there's no time on checking where they are, we should just put cobblestones to the concrete. Or not actually concrete. I'm not sure the translation, mix of concrete and sand that hardens after time. Hit once and move on. Then they left. So that's what we did. For 12 hours, we did the fastest work ever. Every stone we got our hands on, we threw into the ground, hit once, and moved on. The bed looked like crap. It looked like a roller coaster. Some stones were 5 centimeters higher than others. The lines were so crooked that you couldn't find a straight line even if you tried. Saturday came, and the boss had gone to check on our work. He phoned me, and he yelled so much and so loud that I had to tone down the volume on my phone because I was worried about losing my hearing. He told me if I didn't come to fix that crap show you've done that day, there would be 0 work on Monday. I just told him that's okay, good luck on finding some other guys to yell at, and quit on the spot. End result, all 3 of us quit that day. Boss had to spend his whole Saturday fixing our mistakes. He also had to pay us for sabotaging his work site for 12 hours. I doubt he had fun looking for new workers. After we left, there were only him, his second-in-command, and his father that was trying to retire. After I left, I found he had a super poor track record of keeping his employees for more than 1 season. Nobody would tolerate him for more than that. That sounds like a really good way to run your business into the ground. And our next story. So English is not my first language. One day, my brothers and I got a big inheritance from my great uncle. Each of my brothers got a pretty good amount of money while I got a 2-story house with a huge yard and an adjacent pond. The house was in an HOA. And as someone who's never met with the areas under the management of HOAs, I made a rookie mistake. My neighbor was Karen, who at the same time was one of the heads of the HOA, and also a person who was not happy with absolutely everything. I'm not kidding. For example, one day she came to complain that my music was playing too quietly, and she loves the song and can't hear it. The only thing that somehow saved me from her constant presence was the pond, which partially divided our parts and was a substitute for a fence. I put up with it long enough, but one day Karen crossed the line. My dog swam across the pond and curiously ran into Karen's yard. I think any normal neighbor would have at least called the dog's owner since she knew for sure it was my dog. But Karen called the police and said I had sicked her dog to bite her. I can imagine her screaming into the phone, "Oh no, this golden Labrador is here now. He'll break my door and get my house on fire." Luckily, the cops probably knew she was effing crazy and listened to my explanations and let me take the dog home. But that was not all. She sent me a fine from the HOA and a notice that I had to build a fence in the middle of the pond or pay the workers the Karen would hire. That was the last straw. I hired a lawyer who was also my wife and by complete coincidence also hated our Karen. The payment was a big chocolate cake. Together we began to think. My wife decided to check out the docket again and the clue turned out to be right there. In the morning I went over to Karen and said we needed a surveyor if she was going to get her fence. Karen went white and said she was probably overreacting and we'd work it out. But I insisted. The catch was that the previous owner of my house was friends with Karen's mother and let them use the pond. In fact, our territory went some 5 meters beyond the pond. That's where I put my new fence. And our last story. Call me a pervert? Yeah, well, that's gonna cost you a job. There was a woman, let's call her Stacy. Stacy owned a bar. Stacy has a great personality, knows how to make drinks, and successfully ran a bar. Stacy is a young, attractive, ambitious woman. Unfortunately for Stacy, after she built up her bar, her husband emptied her bank account and ran off with all the money. This devastated Stacy, and she didn't have the funds or willpower to move forward. So she sold the bar and started to live off the sale of the bar. Stacy improved herself a lot. Stacy and I were friends, not best friends, but we knew each other. I knew Stacy was starting to run out of money because she'd mentioned this several times in Facebook postings. Well, I'm friends with quite a few business people, and over the course of the last several months, I recommended businesses for her to go apply for a job. After the first recommendation, she thanked me, applied, and got the job. She quit that job. That's fine. I recommended her for another job sometime later. She thanked me. Things didn't work out with that interview/hiring. Life, right? 2 weeks ago, a bar starts looking for a manager. Their offer is really competitive, high salary, profit sharing, etc. I tell Stacy about this bar, and this is copied and pasted. Only edited parts are the names. Club A is looking to hire a bar manager. They want experience, offer a good salary, plus profit sharing. Go to their Facebook page to look for more info. That's it. Our messages for the past several months only had to do about jobs. All very short, all very to the point. 3 days later, she responds, "I'm sick and tired of you stalking me. I'm not into you. Stop messaging me." I qualified this that she meant this for me and not someone else. She confirms it's about me stalking her and how much of a pervert I am, apparently. I stop responding. Did I mention I'm good friends with bar owner from Club A? I asked him if Stacy had applied, and he said that she had, and it's between her and another guy. I said, let me show you our Facebook conversation, and maybe that will help you make up your mind. So I hand him my phone. After reading it, he says, I don't think I want a woman like this working for me. She did not get the job. FYI, Stacy has a boyfriend, has had the same boyfriend for quite some time. He's a good dude. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.